thank you to our panelists. Yeah, absolutely brilliant, and welcome to COP, and yeah, just amazing to be here. So look, what would be great just as a start point is I'll obviously introduce just your name, but then just to give some background, what you're doing, would be lovely to hear. So why don't we start? Yeah, it would be fantastic.
Yes, yes. Hi everyone. I'm Yasmine Mahmoudieh. I'm an architect and interior designer, and our practice is global. And I'm very much focused on sustainability and changing the built, construction world by innovative materials, reducing toxins, and this is kind of my mission. And I like to, spread the word. We do a lot with 3D printing and recycled plastics, but other organic materials, and I think you will hear later on.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Nila Pendarovski. I'm the head roaster, as we say, the hotel manager for Rove Expo. Rove as a brand is a very sustainable brand, and we are happy to be part of this.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think hosting a lot of delegates.
We do.
Right in the middle of the blue and the green zone. You have a hotel right here,
yes,
right?
Yes, right here, yes.
So
very interesting.
Any
very
other
exciting.
hotel? Yeah. You were telling me earlier that you've had some signings in the hotel that have been amazing.
Yes, we had some phenomenal MOU signings. We were told one of the cornerstones of COP. And had to do with energy signings. So we hosted some really high-profile people. We were very proud.
Amazing,
to be part
fantastic.
Of it.
Yeah, on to you.
Rashema Ingraham from Grand Bahama in the Bahamas. I'm the Director of Workforce Development with the Blue Action Lab, as well as the Executive Director of Waterkeepers Bahamas, which is a nonprofit organization that focuses on water advocacy. And we've found a way, these two organizations found a way to engage the community and having them a part of that regenerative tourism product. So I'm going to be happy to be talking about that today.
Amazing, amazing. Well, welcome, and welcome all the way from the Bahamas. I think you've traveled the furthest out of everybody here, so, thank you so much. Nick, over to you.
Good afternoon. My name is Nick. I work for PwC. We are a consultancy, and in my area of the field, I lead our global tourism, hospitality, and destination development advisory services. So we work with countries, regions, cities, and private developers that build destinations and use these destinations to create economic opportunities for the citizen and residents, exposure to the world, economic opportunities for visitors to come in. And we do that across the world. A lot of it in this region here right now. This used to actually be one of my projects many years back. And we do it a lot in Southeast Asia and North Africa as well. It's a pleasure to be with you all.
Amazing. Thank you, Nick. So, tourism and this whole, I think it's the second largest industry in the world. And obviously, it contributes significantly to global finance on a worldwide basis, but also has a very significant impact from a sustainability perspective. So leading to my first question for each of you, and starting with yourself, in terms of tourism industry and including sustainability in its growth, what can travel professionals and what can we do to drive that? How can we work within your space, which is obviously architecture and design, to drive that and to minimize impact and on that side of things?
Well, I think we can do a lot of things already, and I have a feeling everybody is waiting for some magic thing happening, but we have to start doing it now and every day and everyone. And I mean, in my practice, we have been doing a lot of research for sustainable materials for over decades, where we try to identify what are the materials that are really very harmful, and one of them is concrete, which is 8% of CO2 emissions is coming from concrete. So we are trying to find alternatives to build, and we have an array of amazing materials that are cleaning the air, anti-odor, antibacterial, and I might talk more about this, but I think the demand of the traveler of today is they're becoming more conscious about this, and there's a lot of research done where there's definitely a majority of people that would rather go to a more sustainable hotel. It has to be authentic, and it has to be, you know, not greenwashing, which sadly is happening a lot, but it has to be convincing that they are doing something. And sustainability is not just, you know, it's construction, it's local people, it's local food. Even if you are a luxury hotel, it's not flying in the shrimps from Thailand, but it's, you know, it's organic food, it's something close by. And sustainability is about our well-being. I mean, we also have to be sustainable. That's why longevity and biohacking and all of this is such a big trend in the hospitality industry and the travel industry. And this is what we are working on, you know, by doing projects, by spreading the word and trying to, you know, to influence the investors, the developers, but also make architects and designers aware that they have a responsibility. They can't just do things the way they were done because it's familiar, it's easy. We have always to choose the, you know, the difficult way, the challenging way. I mean, it's all about growth, and I think it's the same in the travel industry. If we want to sustain the travel industry and we want to have impact on the world in a positive way, because we can't just, you know, we can't just stop traveling. Obviously, this is not going to happen. But so we have to focus on solutions. And I think there's too much talk about, you know, problems, but we have to find solutions, and there are solutions if we get started, if we do our research, and also if we look at data. And I think, yeah, there's more to do than many people think.
Amazing, amazing thoughts. And forgive me to put you on the spot, but if I said to you, one destination, one hotel, one somebody that's getting it really right in your mind, or a poster child,
there's a company called itmustbenow.com. It's a very interesting website where they only list hotels who have done the certification. And as one example, there's one of the Four Seasons in the Maldives that is totally sustainable. And so it's not that automatically all Four Seasons hotels are in the group. And that's a very good example what they do, you know, what they do with the locals, how they take care of water waste, of energy reduction. I mean, there's so many things they're doing. And so, you know, I encourage you to look on the site at mustbenow.com, because they have examples of hotels who tick the boxes. And really, it's important to get certifications that are also really, authentic. And one of the very known ones is EarthCheck from Australia, which is, I think, the most known in the hospitality industry. And it's a way, you know, to get started.
Amazing, and great to see a big group like the Four Seasons working on that, but at that level and on that basis. No, really, really fantastic.
It has a lot to do also, I have to say, with the local person, I think, who's really very engaging from Four Seasons, and the investor, because they're all different investors.
Of course, and that from an investment perspective, that's a key driver, right? The owners of these properties can drive it alongside the hotel management team.
And what many don't know is that, you know, I'm talking a lot, as you know, all over the world, and I'm showing that you can increase your ROI by building sustainable. And this is something that there's a total misconception about it. And it's just ignorance, I have to say. And you know, and I think we just have to educate and show the way. And at the end of the day, finances are very important. You know, nothing works without return of investments. But it's not contrary. That's mainly my point.
Yeah, and also the consumer voting with their dollars, right? Which is starting to happen as well. And I think that wave, it's starting, but I think it's only going to just continue. Moving on to Rove and yourself, just love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, on that point, Booking.com recently has done a study. 80% of travelers are more likely to choose a sustainable hotel than a non-sustainable hotel. So that's already a really big group. 80% is the vast majority. So the education is taking place, which is great. So once people like Yasmine have given us a really good hotel, and it's sustainable, like, for example, Rove Expo is LEED certified. That means it's been built in a most sustainable way, so you have less air pollution, less noise pollution, you're connected in ways like metro, shuttle buses, etc., which helps us then as an operator to run with it. So we have chosen, as Rove, we have chosen Green Key, which is another certification. It's a really good audit, an in-depth audit that puts us through our paces and ensures that we are doing the right things. And it's not only the greenwashing. So they come with us, they look at how do we spend our energy, our solar panels working, are our salt water pools in place? Do we really have LED lighting? How do we source our produce? Is it organic? Is it local? Is the fishmonger certified, for example, that they don't go into overfished areas? So all this is happening. Plus, I have to say, Dubai is doing a really nice job in involving industry and government to also bring this forward. So they have introduced a sustainability certificate as well, which they call a Dubai Sustainability Stamp, very much alongside Green Key. Another really in-depth audit. We volunteered for it. We wanted to see how we're doing, and we've really been sitting for pretty much a whole day, going through our records and seeing the hotel.
Fantastic.
So this, a lot of efforts are being made to not only take sustainable buildings, but then also in the industry really to go forward with it operationally.
Got it. And I think it's if you look at hotel owners and operators who are operating a standard hotel, facing that, obviously Rove, many of those buildings have been recently built, and so you're able to establish them in the way. But I think that's probably, maybe we'll come back to that challenge because that's where the biggest probably the biggest challenge from a hotel perspective is on a worldwide basis. Moving on to yourself, some thoughts around this.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very happy to say that the Bahamas just recently got its destination management certification, which now gives those national and government agencies the opportunity to say to tour operators or resorts, here is what we need you to do. But not only that, but looking at the fact that we're an archipelago where we have many different islands offering many different types of tourism products, building those councils, those sustainability councils where they can work together as a team to say, how do we all contribute to this product, this practice of sustainability, and not only say it, but it's a part of the council's model. It's a part of their mission. So I know that on Grand Bahama and Abaco, they're looking at establishing it. Places like Eleuthera and Exuma have already found a way to incorporate the council and the voices of the local community, where farmers, where tour guides are a part of the conversation about not only being directed about what it is that they should be doing, but are a part of how they can work together, how they can improve the model of sustainability. And like she said, not only just checking off the boxes, but it's a part of everyone's mission to be a part of the whole sustainability practice, not only the tourists who are looking on booking.com, but also the residents who are providing products, fresh products, who are providing those cultural experiences for visitors who are coming, all a part of the program.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you. Nick's working on some of the biggest tourism development projects in the world. Your thoughts?
You probably can't go wrong if you develop your destinations with your residents and citizens in mind rather than the tourist. The tourist actually shouldn't be the client, even though, of course, ultimately the visitor coming in is something you're looking for happening. But if you look at destinations that are able to move towards sustainability, they tend to be in areas where there is a consensus that the community of local residents, etc., has a certain way that they want to see their destination evolve. And that destination, whether that is in the tangible or intangible or cultural space, then creates an appeal for visitors, right? And very often, quite frankly, your biggest tourists are actually your residents, right? Because day tourism is a humongous part and a very, I would say, sustainable part of your touristic value chain. So if you start or restart, there's cities that haven't done that historically, but that are doing it now. Amsterdam, for example, has a super interesting program in that area. If you recenter the way you plan tourism on what do my residents, my immediate ecosystem needs, then a whole chain of thing happens that probably leads you to something very sustainable, right? You're going to have a more localized value chain because you're going to have more of the business, of the production of some of the things that you had mentioned as well, happening within 20 kilometers rather than within 10,000 kilometers where you got to bring it. You're going to have more local tourism, day tourism, domestic tourism, which has shorter travel times. You're going to have longer periods of stays, so you need less tourists to get to your numbers because you get more nights per tourist, right? You're going to have more grassroots built up of small and medium enterprise, which then creates, a local supplier ecosystem, which yet again is helpful in moving towards a sustainable business model. So that's where we have a lot of conversations across the world, by the way. There's nobody that is doing it much better than the others. There is individual superstar destinations that do it well or that try to do it well. And if you do that, you're gonna have much less of having to deal with this contradiction of saying, well, actually the best part of the most sustainable tourism is the one where everybody stays home, right? Technically. It's not correct, but often people say, well, just don't fly there, just don't travel there. But if you create communities that are built on these covenants, then you actually come to a point where you can have successful, profitable, localized, sustainable tourism. And that's ultimately what everyone is after.
Yep.
Yeah.
So really what I'm hearing there is start with the community, start
Always.
with the local,
Always.
start with the local, think about that, and then work outwards in terms of thinking about the international.
Yeah, and of course you create, I'm a geek, so I need KPIs, right? So when you all your KPIs, forget about visitor nights, forget about average daily spend. I'm not saying they're not important, but they're ultimately what's called lag indicators. They either happen or not, and by the time you see them, it has happened already. But if you set a way that you develop that is based on KPIs that measure your positive impact to community, and there's many ways you can look at that one, then you get exactly to that point, right? Make sure that you plan for your community and make sure that you stay course for your community. That would then also avoid elements such as over-tourism, unjust distribution of income, a few benefiting, many suffering from the negative externalities of tourism. It influences job creation, it goes into the education sector. So you got to keep track and not succumb to the easy buck that is going to have long-term difficulties for you. So yeah, focus on the residents.
Amazing. And yeah, fantastic, thank you, Nick. And your thoughts around that local community piece and what can be done around that area. I mean, that giving back while, obviously there are certain places in the world where, tourism is very dependent on international travelers coming in, but there are certain other places where it's not nearly so dependent. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I think, the local part is very important, and you have to be a bit creative. I mean, if I would imagine I have a hotel in an interesting culture, it's not like, you just go there, stay in the hotel complex and go back, but you can have arts and crafts, you can work with artists, you can work with locals, I mean, healers, whatever there is. I mean, you can really kind of dig into the whole environment. And I think this is about, the hotel is more than just like a place to stay and to eat, but the hotel should be, has the interest to give you a transformative experience. I think we left the experience, kind of a subject where I say, yeah, you want to experience something. No, experience is not enough. It's about transformation, to be a better human being, to, take care of your mind, soul, and body. And to have contact, and human contact is very important. And there's a lot of luxury hotels which are they have a lot of lack of human contact.
Oh.
I don't want to name some, but
Absolutely.
I got so inspired that I'm working on my own hotel brand where I call it's Amman meets Soho House, because I said Soho House has created a community, but it's not luxury, and Amman is luxury, but there's something lacking. And so I think there's a lot of things you can do. You have to be creative to involve the guests into it and also the community. And I think it's a duty of the hotel to create these events, these gatherings. I think everybody should have like an almost event manager for organizing it. It doesn't happen by itself, but this is where you tap into the richness of each country. And this is what traveling is about. I mean, you don't want to just displace yourself to another country and impose yourself coming from outside, spending a lot of money. I think that's very insensitive. And like what Nick was saying, I think it's about taking care of your people, of your staff. The more you take care of them, the better they serve the guests and get them involved into the whole process.
Amazing. Great, really fantastic comments. And yeah, moving on to yourself and Rove on that area in terms of local community. I mean, obviously, here. I think you're 12 hotels as it stands. Is that correct?
Nine.
Nine.
Getting
forgive
there.
Nine hotels, and obviously all of those based in the UAE.
Yes.
And in terms of just local community engagement, and I'd love to hear what you guys are doing.
What Yasmine said, basically. No. It's very true. I mean, we like to be very community driven. So we do very frequently events to involve the local community. For example, we partnered with World Art Dubai in the past and have graffiti contests outside, and you can come the whole day and just experience art as it's made. Artists were showing how to do graffiti, how to do lithography, the good old-fashioned printing. So you involve kids, you involve the families, you involve the artists. You have good food, a DJ, and have a great day. We also have geek days where we get gamers into, particularly Rove Downtown is very well known for this. I'm looking at our events, head of events over there, Paulie, who is in charge of that one. And we had a really great time getting a lot of gamers in. That just was recently, 4 weeks ago, or something like that? Yeah. So you have to get the community on their feet. I absolutely agree. Really. Very aligned.
You gave me a new idea with the graffiti. Then we have to redesign it after the guests.
Yeah.
Yes. So I bought pieces there because it was so cool, and I have them at home. We have to do that again. But there's so many things you can do, and you can get creative, particularly when it concerns art and crafts and music and having a good time.
Fantastic. Very, very cool. And moving on to you in terms of that thought process of local community, and you're working on mangroves in the Bahamas. Tell us a bit about this. It'd be lovely to hear.
Disaster sometimes is a blessing for us. The recent Hurricane Dorian in 2019 really devastated a lot of the mangroves on Grand Bahama and Abaco. And we saw that as an opportunity to not only find a way to engage the community, to get them involved in the restoration project. And when we say community, we don't just mean the residents or government agencies or locals. We also incorporated international funding agencies and then visitors who wanted to be a part of that, who heard about the story and who wanted to help. Not help in a monetary way, but putting their hands in the soil and actually working. And from that, we were able to sit down with tourism professionals and say, how do we now build a service or a product where people are coming, they want to stay, they want to find a unique experience. They don't want that Nassau experience.
Yep.
They don't want the Miami experience. They want a Grand Bahamian Freeport experience. So we thought, let's train some tour guides or some taxi drivers, teach them about mangroves, the different types of mangroves, bring tourism professionals into our nursery, let them be a part of that immersive experience, because I find that a lot of that is lacking. We've been focusing so long on trying to just create that tourist product and not making it unique. So when we built the nursery, we gave them an opportunity to come into a space that can be a new and unique product that we can offer to visitors who are staying for a day, who are staying for a week, who want to be a part of something where we planted 50 mangroves today in 2023, but in 2053, here is the growth of that. So now they have investment into this destination. They want to come back because they want to see how the project is progressing over time.
Amazing. And I think, listen, what is incredible is when that tourism where people will come and actually get their hands dirty, as you said, right?
Right.
And as you said, then they create a bond with that place, wherever that may be. And then the return drive is obviously significantly increased on that side of things. And Nick, in your travels and obviously moving around, how much of that have you seen in terms of from the projects and the side that you've been working on?
So you're talking about the community engagement?
Absolutely.
A lot of the projects that we work on are ultimately the result of regional or national governments' desire to transform their economy, right? You see it a lot here in the region, and in the Kingdom. Tourism has already transformed Dubai and Abu Dhabi. You see it a lot in Southeast Asia. You saw it a lot in Eastern Europe after the fall of the Iron Curtain, right?
Yep.
So when these tourism development projects are set up with an ambition to transform the economy, then very often governments are actually very supportive in saying, you got to show me how this delivers to my local community.
Yep.
And very often, quite frankly, they tend to be early destinations where the local community is what is present when you start developing tourism, right? Saudi Arabia is a perfect example. Both you and I have worked extensively there. Now, when the tourism development boom started there was no leisure tourism there,
Yep.
right? But there were local communities, and there was a humongous 2,000-year-old culture of hospitality, right? So when you do that, and when you do it with the spirit I spoke about before, if you develop it in the spirit of delivering benefits to them, then that comes relatively natural,
Yep.
right? If you superimpose it and say, guys, you were a perfectly happy rural little city, rooted in agriculture and in something else, I don't know, congratulations, you are now a casino destination,
Yep.
then that's where you're going to have problems for 30 years of all kinds, right? Mm-hmm. Luckily, I would say, as of the last 10, 15 years, maybe on the sins of the previous 15 years, this philosophy is much more rooted in the mainstream of tourism development. So this is not a particularly original or revolutionary way of developing tourism. I think it's just a counter movement to the construction and development sins of the 60s and 70s and 80s that all of you would know a couple examples of that. So you can actually do it without really shifting from the mainstream of how you ought to develop tourism.
Absolutely.
It's a lot more fun to do it, to be honest, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So, and what we definitely see, and you just mentioned this a second ago, was obviously governments on a global basis. Obviously, it's a competitive world, and they're all driving tourism from its heads in beds. It's their national GDP for many. I mean, the Bahamas is
Yep.
That's a critical one, right? So there's this real balance, I feel, between government drive, obviously on the overall, and sustainability and profit and all of those pieces moving around. What do you think, maybe from your side, what do you think from a government perspective they could be doing to try and drive the numbers, which we get is so critical to certain countries, right, against, alongside the sustainability side? Love to hear, your thoughts on that.
They definitely should be the regulators and looking at how do we improve the policy, how do we improve legislation in order for the community to benefit, but as well as the visitors to have that experience that they can only find in the Bahamas. So having those conversations on global platforms, finding out about certifications, how do we now incorporate those sustainability practices into our Bahamian product is what government should be doing, and ensuring that there is that framework available for resorts and tour guides and everyone else in the community to have an understanding of where they fit into the equation, but then allowing the people on the ground, the people who are providing the services to really look at what their needs are and express their needs, and not necessarily say this is exactly what should be done, but then look at the needs assessment of where everybody is going to benefit, and allowing them to develop their products, allowing them to develop the experience that the visitors are going to be a part of. And like he said earlier, what Nick said before is so important. Like, you're not only getting those international visitors. For us, like I'm from Grand Bahama. I go to New Providence, I go to Eleuthera, I go to Bimini. I want a different experience on each island that I go to. So I don't want that same thing being offered to me everywhere.
Yeah, got it. No, absolutely. Nick, you obviously, you touched on this already. I mean, you're dealing with, to a degree, governments, tourism authorities all over the world. Your thoughts on, that government piece, and there's a real balance here, right? It's, yeah.
I'm just going to say it. I think we need more government in tourism. right?
You think we need?
More government in tourism.
Yep.
The tourism industry, more so than certain other industries that tend to fuel a country, is a small and medium enterprise business industry, right? And as such, you very often have small, motivated, but often not very powerful participants, you know, in your supply chain, in your local fruit stands, in your local tour guide, etc., so on, that are pitted against large international conglomerates, tour operators,
Hotel chains.
hotels, airlines, etc., so on. And that is just an asymmetry in negotiation that I think is unfair to put on your local ecosystem, saying, well, guys, you guys just need to go and speak to any given airline, XYZ, and tell them that you expect their people to travel more sustainably, and that can't happen, right? So I think there is a strong curating role for those entities in government that have influence in tourism in, first of all, probably having quite a bit of that rebalancing of power that has gone missing in the past sometimes, but also in capacity building, right? In making sure that, again, I'm coming back to the supply chain question, basically this in-country value, that the value generation stays local, that it results in jobs, in education, in restoration, in regenerative tourism projects, and the free market has not managed to produce that in the last 3 or 4 years. And even though I also sometimes see surveys such as, you know, booking.com or so on, but fundamentally where government said, I leave the private sector to rebalance into a more sustainable destination, except a few very small niche products, I've never seen it happen.
Yep.
So there is, I sound very communist here, but there's the need for regulation, for realignment, for readjustment, for re-equipping with new skills. And once that balance is perhaps re-established, then I would expect government to say, quite frankly, I'm not needed to the same extent that I used to, and they could pull back again. But it's a really, really tricky area,
Really
which is probably why we're having a COP. Yeah.
Delicate balance.
Yeah.
Delicate balance. And moving on to Rove again. In terms of the key pieces that you guys are doing in this area, I mean, we've touched on them slightly, but are there any real highlights that you guys would say, well, this is really something that we're outstanding at? I mean, you mentioned Four Seasons, and obviously they're, you know, big group, but any real key high points from your side?
Well,
from a sustainability
from
perspective.
sustainable. I mean, what we did this year was we went plastic free inside the rooms. So we used to have plastic bottles. We now have our own filtration system. We're using glass bottles. We cleaning them, reusing them, and we took a really good look at every single aspect inside the room. Are we 100% plastic free yet? No, because we still have to work with suppliers. There are certain regulations in terms of kitchen hygiene where we have to use, for example, cellophane wrap. But again, then there are different solutions already out there that you use a certain type that is that we can regenerate. Perhaps the other thing that we're really good at is the whole waste management aspect, where we partnered with a really good waste management company that gives us very clear statistics on what type of waste we have. So our KPI is to reduce waste to landfill for this year and then for the next year. Our food waste gets composted 100%. We're also working with food banks, and we're working with technology. So we implemented a technology called Winnow, which measures our food waste. So we can see, for example, right now we have buffets, which we normally don't do because they are more wasteful than a la carte. But we have such big volume at this particular hotel that we just have to put up a buffet. But we can see, for example, we threw away a lot of potatoes. Why is that? Did we cook too much? And if we cook too much, can we reuse them? Can we repurpose them? Can we make a potato salad or something the next day? So that's really really cool. and talking about government, so government now here has an initiative also to reduce food waste, which I think is great. So we are one of the trial properties right now. We measured our food waste, and our base was, I think, per plate, we had approximately 50 gram food waste per plate, whereas an average out there is about 70. So ROFE already is lower. So now, this week, we started having COP, and we saw, oh, these guys are much more conscious. So the food waste was down to about 28 gram, which great. And then we put out reminders, like little 10 cards to say, this is how much food you should take, change starts with you. So little teasers to get the brain going to say, oh, maybe I take less food and come back for more. And it reduced from 28 gram down to 24 gram, which is maybe small, but 28 is already really small to begin with. But, you know, so these are the little things you can do to start educating people in a nice way. So to have nudges out there and get them engaged in the whole process to say, oh, okay, I'm producing less waste.
Absolutely. And I mean, what we're really hearing there is that, and this is not just for the hospitality industry, but this is the little things that people can do on a daily basis. I mean, from across board, those little things can have that impact. And
so
I think
once you start that there, maybe then at home you do the same. You buy less, you have less at home, you have less in the fridge, you throw less away, because that also is a huge problem around the world, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, your thoughts would be lovely too.
Well, with your food waste, we work with a company that creates tableware out of food waste. And there's other things that can be done with food waste. So for me, the exciting thing is to see from all waste that's around the world, from construction, from any kind of materials, from plastic, but also from concrete, from tiles, from ceramics. There are some amazing companies that take this and make it into new materials. So, I mean, I was talking about plastics. Only 9% of all plastic in the world gets recycled, which means everything ends in landfill and in the oceans. So by 3D printing, which we have started to do, and we can really show and prove, because I did an exhibition in Design Miami in Basel showing how you can build, how it's sturdy, architecture and design, with recycled plastic if it's 3D printed. 3D printing is really interesting and is going to be the future anyway, because there is no waste. When you 3D print, you don't have waste product. And then the plastic itself, if you have the 3D printing, you can recycle it. It's circular economy, indefinite. But there are other companies, like in Italy, there's a company that do amazing ceramics tiles, and they have built a building in Milan, for example, that in 2 years they offset the CO2 that was produced through the production of the ceramics. And I think one thing we forget is that we are surrounded by toxins everywhere. So we know they're in food, they're in the air. So in terms of the air, we have materials that you can use for the facade, which literally takes the CO2 and transforms it into oxygen. Or we have some that there's data on it that reduces with these materials, and also in landscape, there are materials that you can use in landscape which really reduces the air pollution. And there are tens of millions of people dying every year because of air pollution. Yep. And on the same hand, when I talk about some of these other materials, there's so many, in wood, there's formaldehyde, there's all these toxins. And there are alternative materials, and I think it's important to see, and they're beautiful, they're aesthetically beautiful, and you can really do something. So it's not the same wood, it's reclaimed wood. We work a lot with reclaimed wood from Holland, but you can have reclaimed wood almost everywhere. And it's about looking how you use the waste instead of producing always, new materials. And there's even a material for Saudi Arabia, for example, that I don't think they even know, or even here in Dubai, which is 50% produced by desert sand. It's half the impact of concrete, and it's as strong as concrete. And you can build with this material, which was invented by, it's very often very creative people who invent these products.
Amazing. No, fantastic. Brilliant. And looking, as we sort of come slightly towards the end, looking towards the future for each of you, emerging trends that you see. Nick, you're obviously working sort of on the forefront of this, and in terms of just anything that you see that is coming up any moving parts around that one that you really think this is something you can see coming down the line? I mean, it's so difficult, isn't it, in terms of tourism, people wanting that growth, but then managing the sustainability thing. But yeah, in terms of that first question, your thoughts would be great.
So one trend that has been talked about for a while, but really hasn't, at least I haven't seen it till recently, is that move from sustainability as a, let's call it a marketing gimmick, or perhaps more positively as a differentiating factor, to a prerequisite if you want to have access to financing, access to promotion and distribution, right? That has only happened relatively recently, that you would go to a bank and say, hey, I'm a good credit risk, I want to build a hotel, etc., I'm going to do so. And the bank says, and what about your sustainability, right? 2, 3, maybe even 5 years ago, they would have said, wonderful, 7% okay for you, go, do whatever you want with it, right? Not quite, but exaggerating. Yep. So that trend is massive. It's not very sexy to talk about it because you can't touch it, right? But it's ultimately got the potential to freeze out non-sustainable development.
Yep.
Because the overwhelming majority of anything touristic that gets built or financed in the world relies on some form of third-party finance, sure, right? And if they say, they don't do it as aggressively, but if the result is either be credible and documented and demonstrated in certain sustainable practices, or you're just going to be frozen out of the market. So it's not even the consumer that is going to say, I need you to do all these things or I'm not coming. You're never even going to be born to begin with as a touristic product. So that's a really cool product. That's a really cool trend.
And can you see the bankers driving and the investors driving that in real, in terms of knowing their...
Yes, yes, you can.
Starting to happen.
So first of all, yes, you can. And there, to be fair, a lot of the original thinking and a lot of the original driving of that actually came from the bankers. It didn't come from the area at large. It was, bankers, or the financial industry, right? It was also insurances and private equity. They are very good at looking forward and saying, what are the requirements towards financing and investment going to be in the future? So they started calling it very early. They introduced a lot of the, I'm Swiss, so maybe I have to defend the bankers, sorry. But so they started basically formulating the first prototypes of what sustainable finance would look like. Then other people came in, regulators came in, alternative investment sources came in. But to me, that's one of the more exciting ones because it tackles the challenge at the roots.
At the ground.
If only sustainable things get financed and built, many of these things that you wonderfully are able to show right now as saying, look, we're trying to do something, but we're pretty alone right now, are going to be natural. They're going to be, it's like treating each other nicely. So actually, I'll just stay with that one to yield some time back, but that one trend is one to watch.
Amazing.
It's really exciting.
Amazing.
There's
Listen,
more.
if we can get that piece working from an underpinning perspective, foundation-wise, amazing in terms of the drive. Yeah, your thoughts in terms of any trends that you see coming down the line?
Emergent trends, especially for Blue Action Lab, are those investments that are low impact but involves that community engagement aspect. Really looking at attracting those businesses, those opportunities that are going to be complementary, but those opportunities that are also going to blend in well and provide a product or service that helps to enhance the community, allowing them to be able to interact with locals, having locals be a part of providing some of their services, providing some of their products, like the farmers, like the small tour operators. We're finding that that's something that we're really going to have to focus a lot more on because that's the type of investment that we're attracting.
Yeah, amazing. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think in general, we're saying very often we're trying to educate the consumer, but I think really the consumer is educating us. And it will become, I think sustainability is, it will be just much more a way of life in the future. We still will continue to talk about it, and I think it's never a road that ends. We have to continue to improve and get better. But I think you can only do that together.
Yeah, yeah. So really, yeah, I think your point, the consumer is, I think if it comes at it both sides, one is on the investment side and the consumers in terms of voting with their dollars, their feet, their thought process, and that will drive behavior of the service industry that is the tourism industry ultimately. Yeah, your thoughts?
Well, I think there's going to be some pressure because there's going to be carbon tax that nobody really talks about or knows about. And I think, I mean, I don't know in this part of the world, but in Europe, definitely there are regulations that are out where you have to pay carbon tax if you are not sustainable. So I mean, there's this one pressure, and I think this is going to determine, you know, developments of hospitality. But I agree. You can do things. I mean, I have, for example, I think it's very important when you have resort hotels and you have children, you can have sustainability workshops. They are the next generation.
Yep.
So you know, this is not taught in school, sadly. So I think there are things that you can do to, you know, to be more proactive. And you can see the trend that it's also about the green branding. I think in marketing-wise, it's differentiating a hotel from the other. And I think some brands are realizing that this is a way, and you know, and people understand very quickly it's authentic or not. So if you do it the right way, you will have customers forever, and you will have repeated customers. So
amazing, amazing. And I think we have a few more minutes for any questions that we might have from anybody. We have somebody over here.
Hello. Yeah. Nicholas, this is probably directed at you, sort of going on the investment piece that you were talking about. Obviously, it's, you know, bankers are looking at investing new developments in a sustainable perspective, but looking at the amount of hotels that are already in existence, the refurbishments, refinancing, is there pressure on vendors, you know, that are coming to the end of a holding cycle that need to think about defensive refurbishments and that kind of element? Your thoughts would be really interesting there in terms of...
Sure. Look, one of the cool things, and let's stay with hotels as an example, right? Because they are one of the largest classes of tourism assets. Luckily, they deplete very fast because, you know, they get a lot of traffic in there, a lot of in and out. It's pretty tough life being a hotel, right? Because you get beaten the hell out of yourself, basically, right? Which means that the reinvestment cycles that you need in order to stay in the game are relatively short, right? I mean, you can plan on, depending on what kind of a property you're in and where you are, to basically redo the inside of your rooms every 5 to 8 years, and the rest basically within 20 years you're going to build a hotel and you're going to finance it one more time in the refurbishments. It's kind of the rule of thumb. So that gives you recurring points to make a decision of how you want your next round of investment to look. And if you look at what has happened recently, especially Europe is a great example, the number of sustainable refurbishments that are happening in Europe right now are astounding. And it's not necessarily because people suddenly found their sustainability soul. It's because energy prices have quadrupled, right? And so solutions that were perhaps less attractive now have a payback period of 2 years where it used to be 20 years. And of course, governments are helping as well. So there is, again, I wish I could give you a more melodramatic, all is wrong and we're never going to get there message. But the reality is, in very boring small steps, the refurbishment of hospitality assets across the world is actually progressing rather nicely. But we're not done yet, of course, right? But in general, I think this is an area where we see a lot of improvements very quickly these days.
Good in a way that the energy cost is driving that drive, right?
Yeah,
and that's a really, really.
I mean, look, sustainability should. It doesn't always need to have to be painful, right? Sure. You need to take opportunities of these windows, take advantage of these opportunities where there's an intersection of what you want sustainably from sustainability and what makes sense commercially. And when you have these windows, you got to push to serve that wave out until it perhaps dies down. And suddenly you've created a new standard that then becomes natural, whereas it was quite innovative a few years before, right? So, yeah.
Amazing. Any more questions? No? One more question. Here we go. Probably last one.
Hi, thank you. It's not really a question, but I just wanted to echo this, that the role of hospitality as touch points, because there's so many touch points in every experience of the tourists when they come, and the educational opportunity, as we're doing with Riva, is massive, because we're looking already at furnishing our houses like hotels are furnished, and so being inspired by the hotels that we stay in. So you're bringing in maybe some tourists because they're choosing you for your sustainability, but you also have the opportunity to bring people in because you're beautiful, and actually then to educate and take that back home. So I think that's a great opportunity.
Amazing, yeah. I mean, I think I think both of you actually made that point around education and the responsibility of tourism, which, as I said at the beginning, is the second largest industry in the world, to educate. And if that's part of the mix, it's a fantastic thought process. Great. Well, look, just to wrap up here, to say thank you to everybody on this fantastic panel, and happy travels, everybody.
Happy travels.
Thank you.